from the University of Oslo.
The Nobel Peace Prize is widely considered the most prestigious of all international prizes. Nevertheless, Peace Prize laureates are not infrequently highly controversial, and not only with governments that regard the laureate in question as an embarrassment. One particularly sad example of this is the Peace Prize laureate Aung San Suu Kyi, who has emerged as someone who, as Prime Minister of a country, is co-responsible for the unimaginable terror launched against the Rohingya people in Burma, and apparently impervious to the severe and worldwide criticism directed at her. At this very moment, in the International Court of Justice in The Hague, which has been vigorously defending the Burmese army and denying its genocidal attempt. The most respected Peace Prize laureates in modern times. He has persistently pursued non-violence and rational discourse as the only way to resolve conflicts, be it between China and Tibet, or conflicts on communal or personal levels. In his rejection in his own life of anger, craving, and ignorance, according to Buddhism, the root evils of existence, he practices what he preaches. I'm aware that the organizers of this meeting hoped that I might contribute to the portrayal of the Dalai Lama. However, I'm afraid that my encounters with His Holiness have been superficial and our meetings brief. Let me therefore simply share a few anecdotes. A few days after the Nobel Peace Prize ceremony in Oslo, His Holiness was, as you know, invited to the Sami Parliament in Kautokeino by Ole Henrik Magga, President of the Parliament. I had the good fortune of being able to join the retinue of His Holiness and was therefore present, together with Chungdak Dawakuru, during his visit to the far north of Norway. At the dinner hosted by the Sami Parliament, the menu consisted of traditional Sami food. The first course was reindeer marrow bones, and long, thin spoons were provided in order to scoop out the marrow from inside the bones. A Sami seated near His Holiness remarked that traditionally the marrow would simply be sucked out of the bone, to which His Holiness replied that this was how he himself had been used to doing it in his childhood before coming to Lhasa. He then started enthusiastically sucking his bone, and everybody put away their spoons and followed his example. The dinner continued, as you can imagine, in a very good spirit and without any formalities. The second episode is perhaps trivial, but very touching for me. A few years after this dinner, I was visiting Dharamsala. As it happened, His Holiness had just returned from one of his many journeys, and as I was approaching the Tsuklakang temple, I joined a small crowd lining the road. When the motorcade passed by, I joined my hands respectfully, although in a rather un-Tibetan way, I tried to catch His Holiness's eye. He looked at me, and without hesitating, he said a single word, "Ah, Norway." He remembered me and our travel together to Kautokeino. Now, both these encounters, to my mind, illustrate an important element in His Holiness's character and help to explain the great esteem and even affection he creates in people he meets all over the world, namely his extraordinary ability to remember countless individuals, to connect or reconnect with them by a smile, a gesture, or perhaps a few friendly words, making every person feel special. I believe this reflects his inner serenity and integrity, traits that are too often sadly lacking in the statesmen and politicians who struggle and scramble for power and riches, for the greatness of a nation or for themselves. Now, I was also given a second assignment today, namely to share with you some of my thoughts about Tibet, and in particular the Tibetan exile community over the 30 years that have passed since His Holiness received the Peace Prize. Now, I'm not an expert in modern Tibetan history, nor in the complex legal and political aspects of what used to be called the question of Tibet. However, we are fortunate to have with us tonight someone who is far more knowledgeable in these matters than myself, Bobby Barnett, who will be speaking to you in a moment. Personally, as a scholar, I am more at home in 12th century Tibet than the 21st century. Nevertheless, although having for many years been increasingly at the margins of what might be called the Tibet support movement, I shall try to fulfill my assignment and touch on a few points which I think are of fundamental importance, first and foremost for Tibetans themselves, but also for friends of Tibet all over the field and all over the world, not necessarily as a birthright, but as a gift given to them by His Holiness the Dalai Lama. So as part of this process, and perhaps with a wish to hasten it, in 2011, His Holiness retired from his political role as the head of the exile government, only retaining his purely religious functions. However, given his age and his inevitable passing away sooner or later, and his undisputed spiritual supremacy and influence behind the scene, the question necessarily arises, what will happen after his passing away? There are, of course, a range of scenarios, so I shall just hint at a few that seem, if nothing else, not wildly speculative. So to start with that, as far as the Chinese government is concerned, it will almost certainly begin proceedings to install a new Dalai Lama, who will be found, obviously, within Tibet and remain under strict Chinese control, no matter how much Tibetans inside Tibet may be opposed to this. By contrast, looking at it from the perspective of the Tibetans, not least those in the diaspora, the initial reaction of the passing away of His Holiness will be one of immense grief and even despair. This inevitable day is not much spoken about among exiled Tibetans, as if speaking about it might hasten the event. Nevertheless, the more Tibetans are prepared for this day, the better, and much will depend on the nature and the maturity of the political institutions in exile if a long period of transition is to be handled successfully. Now, assuming that His Holiness does not make a final statement to the effect that his lineage will come to an end with his passing away, a search for a new Dalai Lama will be instituted, and the candidate will certainly be found outside Tibet itself. There will then be a situation with two rival Dalai Lamas, both of whom will presumably be small children and remain minors for the next 20 years or so. Others will act and speak on their behalf. Although the new Dalai Lama outside Tibet is likely to be regarded as the genuine one by the vast majority of Tibetans, and probably also by the international community, the long-term consequences of there being two claimants is anyone's guess. On the other hand, it is still conceivable that His Holiness may in the end make a statement to the effect that he is the last Dalai Lama, in which case it will be crucial that the leaders of the religious traditions, as well as the secular organizations, including the Tibet Parliament in exile, are able to agree on a robust policy for ensuring the cohesion and continuity of the exiled community.